Welcome to CISO's Insiders podcast, powered by GRC Consulting. In this podcast, we'll be interviewing leading CISOs and security leaders in the industry for light, eye-level conversations. Here, they share advice and tips, talk about their biggest accomplishments and failures, favorite drinks, key influencers, and much more. We encourage you to walk away with at least one insight that will help you better yourself or your business. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more content, please check us out on social media.
Welcome, everybody. Today I'm speaking with Zlatko Unger. Zlatko is the current head of IT and security at a company called Alation. And going back a bit, reviewing your bio, I see that you started off working at one of the big four, one of the big accounting firms back in 2006, I think. You held a couple of positions before you moved into the payment space. I believe that was with First Data, holding a position of security and compliance manager, and moving up the ladder as a security program manager, director of security and compliance. Before landing at your current position 3.5 years ago. If you wanted to step in and introduce yourself properly, that would be excellent.
Thanks, Ben. Zlatko Unger, you can call me Z. Right now I'm responsible for IT and security at Alation. I was the first hire here and have grown the team quite a bit to support the business needs and help our customers.
Thank you for that, Z. Before we do a deep dive, I just want, to put you at ease. I'm not going to ask you anything too challenging, too technical, too revealing about your company, although you're probably much more technical than I am by now. But the main intent of this podcast is basically to create some quality content and to educate our listeners and provide them with some insight into leading CISOs in the industry. So this podcast will be focused about you, not specifically about your company, or not expecting you to divulge any and all sensitive information. And with that, before we do a deep dive and before I ask you a bunch of questions about your journey, if you're willing to share your marital status and favorite drink, that would be excellent.
So I'm married with 1 4-year-old. Quite chaotic year-old that keeps me takes the rest of my energy. And in terms of a favorite drink, I'm a big fan of like 10% and plus Belgian beers. So like a triple or quadruple. That's my jam. But I don't drink that often since I rather spend my time cycling and try to keep the aging to a minimum.
Yeah. What's the triple and quadruple with Belgian beer? I'm not familiar with that.
So I'm not a big expert into beers. Just the way that it is produced. I don't have the specifics.
No worries.
Again, I'm not a big drinker.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like beers. I like beers as well. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. I don't necessarily know how to explain why I like it, if that makes sense. Same with wine, and
Yeah.
But
So it's
please.
really like the body of the drink. It's thicker. It's darker, and it's meant to be sipped instead of watching a sports game and and gulp. Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I think one of my favorite beers is Left Brown, which I think is Belgian as well, and I think it qualifies to that description. But anyway, so let's do a deep dive right now. If there's one thing you wish you'd known before you began your career, what would that be?
So the way that I pause is that reflecting back on the question, there's just so many things that are unknowns going into it, and the other part is that the industry changes. The way that my career at KPMG kind of when it came to an end was because the market the markets have changed around the recession, where the team became more focused on selling enterprise software and consulting services rather than doing true cybersecurity, because the business demanded a revenue line, and this is the only way to move forward. For me, it was cybersecurity wasn't really a thing back in college, and I like computers, I like IT, and there's nobody to kind of give you an idea what's behind the scenes, since what you see in your classes doesn't really reflect what the real world is. Twitter was not what it is today, where you could learn more about cybersecurity. It's not a common theme. So I would say that having more interactions with individuals that are in the field that can say, hey, this is what's behind the curtain. These are the possibilities, the ways that you can go, the work that you'll be doing. Don't go this path because you're going to be a copy and paste data entry monkey. Go here. You're going to be able to meet some very interesting humans and bond and have relationships, and that will help you accelerate your career. And I didn't have that until well into my stint at KPMG, where I realized what I'd rather be doing than all of the engagements that I was on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and when trying to educate young listeners out there that are just starting to embark on their cybersecurity careers, and typically I ask this as we go forward with the podcast, but do you feel that there's any other way to to gain that insight before landing like your first position and really understanding what's going on?
I would say that the world is a little bit more vocal. There are very good groups and communities around the internet that cater towards beginner to moderate to like very high level, very technical discussions on any cybersecurity topic. There's several different subreddits on Reddit. There's InfoSec Twitter. I'm sure that there's some other groups around. But I would say that for any entry role, being plugged in and browsing around, seeing the content of one of the InfoSec Twitter celebrities or certain subreddits to kind of gain an insight, see the talk and see both the discussion on the technical side as well as the business and strategic side, and learn the acronyms, learn what's hot, and kind of build that in back of your head, so when you have a conversation with somebody in person via Zoom, what have you, that you're able to grasp on those concepts and not be lost as to what was going on, what conversations you came in. The other thing to do is to come out to a conference if your company will sponsor you, or if you're around for RSA or Black Hat, B-Sides, wherever they might be, or DEF CON, and interact with others and see, kind of repeat that process but in person, and make those connections there.
Okay. Yeah, I would say good advice is Twitter. So that's the, learning from Twitter. That's very millennial, I would say. Don't you feel, by the way, that there would be a bias of like, social media and the way it is in learning through that channel though?
Well, it's more of learning who the people are that are driving the discussion on several different topics, and where they're pointing to different resources outside of the website as to where the discussion is happening on that topic. So I remember back when I was working for First Data, going on Twitter whenever there was a new CV, a new vulnerability that was affecting massive systems around the world, that Twitter was much easier to point towards a resource that had the analysis, rather than reading some blog post on a security vendor's website or something along those lines that kind of gives you the high level but doesn't give you the details that you can apply and push the conversation towards somebody who can take action. Secondly, in terms of the individuals that are on Twitter, CISOs that I have worked for, to young individuals that are just about to graduate college, are on there interacting on the same topics, and it kind of evens the ground in terms of the conversation, and nobody knows the background story. Nobody knows that you're some whiz kid that has 5 books published under them versus somebody who is a junior in high school. But at the same time, it allows you to see what's out there and kind of intrigue your interest. Is it incident response? Is it red teaming, or is it more policy related? And how is there a gap between what cybersecurity is to operational to privacy risk? And at the end of the day is to kind of give you as much information as possible, so that way as you're growing your career, the areas that you can dive in, because you might be stuck in a company that doesn't have the resources or the departments where you want to grow, and this can lead to a connection. There's an individual the other day, yesterday, that quit his job and then mentioned, now I am an engineer at a big retail company in Washington, and he got the job because he made the connection on Twitter. It's there to connect people. You can say the same thing about LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is Facebook. It's corporate Facebook basically, and you're not going to make the same connections there.
Got it. Okay. And again, looking at the beginning of your career, what would you say? Like, I'm sorry, looking at your journey so far, can you identify like a single biggest failure and your key takeaway from that?
Yeah, so I think this is a very good transition to that question. One of the things that I noticed growing my career, and this is back in Atlanta, Georgia, was that I was very limited in terms of what companies are, where I could grow my career. There's lots of huge corporations where you put in your time, you're going to get promoted, but you're going to be focused on a very specific area of a certain part of all of that is cybersecurity. So when I came to the Bay Area and realized that there is more to it. You could be in a role where you're wearing different hats. Every day is different. You wake up excited about the new challenges for the day, or whatever you have left over from the previous day. And I would say that the biggest failure was not realizing that sooner and staying in Atlanta for longer. But again, that's my journey. Some are more comfortable in working with bigger companies, but I like to thrive and like to wear different hats. I'm a bald guy, so like I have to wear a hat all the time.
I can relate.
And and I see myself. I saw myself just kind of like open my eyes as to what's possible and where I could be the driver and screw up and get things right, but at the same time own it and feel that something that I brought from nothing can thrive in a bigger company or in a different direction.
Okay, interesting. Interesting that you consider that as a failure, though. What would you say then? Yeah, please go ahead.
I think of it. I should have, immediately after leaving college, or perhaps after my stint at KPMG, said, okay, like West Coast, let's see what's out there. And holding myself back a couple of years and not getting that traction a little bit earlier on, I think was sort of a failure from a standpoint. Since I thought to myself upon graduating from, I was doing night school, got my MBA, and going like, is this it? Like, is this going to be like the next 30 years of just doing this? And then realizing, whoa, like there's so much more to it. This is amazing. Yeah. I get to do a lot of different things. And failure as in I didn't realize that multiple years ahead of time.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I have a similar experience. What would you say then that your biggest accomplishment was?
I think, you can always say the work that you do for a company is the biggest accomplishment. You did a huge project that took multiple years. You got a pat on the back. You got, an Amazon gift card or what have you. But at the end of the day, I would say the building effective teams, being the first hire, and then building a team that can take that checkbox activity. Do we have X? Yep. Does it work? Let's not worry about that. Going beyond and maturing the process and having those individuals and hiring right and have them expand and achieve the next level of whatever it is, maturity, agreement with the customer, what have you. I would say creating those teams and looking for the right individuals that can fit those roles and take it to the next level has been a great accomplishment, especially as a person manager.
Got it. Let's assume I'm, someone new to the industry. I'm just getting started with cybersecurity as a career. What advice would you give me as someone that's just starting off?
Yeah, so besides going to conferences, which can be expensive, and if your employer doesn't want to pay for them or you don't have the money, you could go into a local DEF CON chapter. You can join the aforementioned communities in Twitter, Reddit. There might be some Discord server that I'm not aware of, and start making those connections. Create those internet friends. And one day you're going to have an opportunity to meet them in person. It's going to be amazing. But in the meantime, those individuals that have walked the walk before you can help you out, can point you to the right direction, can make the connection at the next company that you could work for that has that opportunity that you're seeking. I would say every single job that I have had was due to the connections that I had. So somebody that I worked for before worked for the company that I got hired. And without having those connection, and as an introvert, it's difficult, but creating your own brand, being out there, and just trying new things leads to the next step to grow your career.
And I ask about the role of the CISO as part of as being part of the IT organization, and I'm not sure what's your corporate structure and if you fall under the IT or not, but there are two schools of thoughts on that, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on like the CISO position as it relates to the IT organization. Did you think like if a CISO reports to the IT organization, what are your thoughts, like cons, pros?
So it depends. Every company has a different reporting structure. I've been a part of, under general counsel. I've been under CFO. I've been under a chief data officer, and I've been, like stuck in the tail end of engineering in my function. I would say IT and security coexist. It's a yin and a yang, right? IT is enablement. Here, you have this cool new thing to get your job done. Here's a laptop, here's a camera, here's a mouse, what have you. You're enabled. And security is the yang. It's, hey, how about not doing X or Y because you're putting yourself, you're creating risk, you're putting company's data in a bad place, you're not following procedure. And together, IT and security work together in order to better the company, enable and protect. Now, in terms of the alignment to IT, I would say a CISO and the CIO can be the same person, or they can be peers, or they can be peers on different reporting structures. The CIO under the COO and the CISO directly under the CEO, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter as long as there's synergy between the two, as long as there is a good relationship, or if that role is centralized into one person, that there is enough feedback from others to not have it so skewed by personal taste or preference.
Well, obviously, I mean, if it's the same person, I think that's your role, right? Yeah. If it's you have responsibility. I mean, you will be accountable for both spaces. So
right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the way that I look at it is my ask is to manage risk, and I know that the easy way to a solution is just to say no to whatever the ask is, but it's a risk-based approach. It should be no but, and I have to hold myself accountable to see it from both perspectives, from an IT perspective, from a security perspective, and then from the end user's perspective, to make that decision so that way it's balanced, but at the same time to check in and get input from others on the team or some of my peers in order to make sure that my take on it is aligned, because I could be biased by the things that I see that I'm not aware of. For example, I was I was told that I am being too paranoid in my current role, and I call myself Chief Paranoid Officer because I always think of the worst case scenario, the riskiest thing when somebody comes to with a question or a way of doing things, and I've constantly have to level myself and say, hey, am I looking at it in the right light? What is really at stake here? What is that risk? And again, there's no fancy schmancy risk ranking papers, and it's not very formal, but it's mostly a conversation to see how to strike that balance of being approachable but also being enabled, or having the ability to enable somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. What, in your opinion, like, and you've been in this industry for a while now, what has helped you best? Like, what are the best resources that you've used, to better educate yourself, to move ahead in the industry and all that?
I would say that having mentors along the way helped a good amount. Having somebody who has walked the walk before you, somebody who has experienced ebbs and flows of the economy and how it impacts the security sector, or the security of an organization. And as I have walked on my career, up my career ladder, having those mentors really helped me define what I should be looking for in my next role, rather than saying I want something else and not tuning my search for a specific role. Those mentors have opened my eyes to what's possible, but at the same time created the necessary connections to have those conversations with whatever roles I was considering at the time. Also, through mentorships, reading the right materials, checking out the right blogs, looking at the right InfoSec Twitter folks definitely helped me shape my view and also expand my view to what's out there. Having a conversation with somebody that you admire and asking like, hey, can you mentor me because I want to do what you did 20 years ago, 10 years ago, what have you, is difficult, but it bears a lot of fruit down the line.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, are you open to mentoring anyone in the industry? If someone
Definitely.
would, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. So we'll get to how those individuals might be able to connect with you as we move
Certainly.
forward here. Is there like one common myth about our profession that you wanted to debunk?
I would say that we are all knowing. So in my previous few roles, there was an ask that to understand the complete financial impact, business impact, technology, understanding of the technology, the behind scenes pieces, and that somebody is all rounded, or that in my role, I know all of the aspects from wearing every hat from major business functions. That's not the case. Usually I have to go and ask our manager of the DevSecOps, how does this thing work? I don't have the time capacity to spend 8 hours to understand how a certain function of AWS works, but because it's something that new, but he'll be able to provide context and summarize it at a business level that I can go like, oh, I get it. Okay, this is good, this is bad, and having those around you to enable you to make those decisions quickly. But again, there's certain staff that sends over a very technical document or something that is very financial or oriented and says, oh, do your magic, from a security perspective. And, having the ability to raise a hand and say like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Please, guide me what you need me to do because this is outside my domain expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you say to yourself, oh, I know it all, I'm the best at, all these different business domains, you're going to make a mistake because you're not, unless you're, some, inhuman creature.
In your opinion, what are the main concerns that CISOs nowadays have?
I would say that every CISO that I talk to some extent, ransomware is something that is buried behind everybody's head. Even though those individuals might be working for a smaller company that is, utilizing Linux machines or their Macs. Just the fact that ransomware exists, it's not a problem that has been solved. And there's, you might not be vulnerable, but your vendor is, and your vendor has all your data. Therefore, it creates downstream effects, and you might feel safe, or you go sleep at night knowing that all of the things that you're responsible for are in a good state. However, the vendor risk is always something that keeps one eye open. Well, I sleep, that's a bad analogy, but I think you get my meaning. And given that we're so dependent on different vendors, we're not hosting services internally like we used to back in the day. Everything is a service in the cloud, somebody else's cloud. The way that data moves, the mistakes that are being made by just being human, create avenues of threats and potential issues down the line. So I spent a lot of my time understanding the impact of, from a privacy perspective, where data is being stored, what type of data is there, and what type of protections those vendors have. And knowing, how risky certain contracts are with those vendors, and where we can be protected, and how good is their insurance.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a bit more about and try to unpack more about the role of the CISO nowadays. In your opinion, what are the most important skills that a CISO nowadays should have?
I would say having that presence, that executive presence, being able to sit in front of non-security people and explain why a certain thing is happening, either why we're moving from one technology to another, why we're implementing a higher state of security through another tool, and summarizing it at a very top level. Because if you start going off the acronyms, if you start going into the details of potential threats and risks and everything else, you lose the audience. But if you're able to speak to very high level, who's asking for it, what we're doing, and how it's going to be done, and summarizing it as an at the executive level, and disseminating it amongst the masses, the entire company, helps achieve goals much easier than having, for example, a slide that has 50 bullets and everybody gets lost in the details. Staying up high and explaining it definitely bears fruit down the line.
Mm-hmm. But in order to stay up high, as you said, so let me rephrase. What's the combination that you think a CISO should have between technical know-how, whether it's IT related, software development related, business related, vendor management? You mentioned vendor management, compliance, and all that. Did you have a perfect mix that you can think of?
Yeah. Sure. So one key is consistency, because you're presenting, you might be presenting the same information in front of different audiences, a specific group on a project, a steering committee, and then perhaps all company. Everybody has a different level of engagement, but the data needs to be consistent. And having a balance between those broad, very simple decks or slides that have the information, and then providing the appendix and the nitty-gritty details behind the scenes, help those that are super technical. They skip in this is too simple. Oh, all the details are here. Or those whoa, that's too many details, I need it simplified, can go there. Having that consistency, but also the breadth in the presentation helps. I've included appendices in many of the presentation, and I've asked my staff to do the same in order to get those that need more details, additional information, but those that want to keep it high level. Okay, this is the status. All right, I'm good to go.
Got it. Thank you for that. So in other words, though, you're saying that as a CISO, you need to have some kind of business, I'm not going to say business training, but business knowledge. You need to understand like the business, but you also need to understand like at some level to be able to speak like, other domains, like, as I mentioned, like software development and IT
Yeah.
and all that. Was that
Well,
correct?
the way I think of it is the presentation of the data. Understanding what your business does and where it's vulnerable is the other part that anybody at this level needs to understand, and might not know how clicking a button, say that you work for software, what clicking a button activates on the back end, but knowing that those technologies on the back end exist and what they do to some extent helps. At the same time, not ignoring non-technical parts of the business, ignoring your peers in facilities or marketing or those areas that are not as close to the security, and knowing what it means for them because they're operating in similar worlds with similar tools that are more focused to their domains, and being able to understand how you can protect their interactions while also enabling them for business, to get the business done.
Okay. And when you look at the industry and you go to events and conferences and you look at your peers, in your opinion, where do you think that this CISO role is going? Like, what will be the next step in the evolution of a CISO? Like 5 years from
Mm.
now, 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think that the role of CISO ebbs and flows, right? So we've seen a very high increase of a need of a security officer that reports to the CEO, and then we slowly started seeing those roles fall on the sword. What happened to Target? What happened to Equifax? And
Equifax.
many others. Those roles are basically gone. They're no longer. They're hidden. Right now with Facebook, Google, and all of these big companies, those roles are kind of spread through different products and different teams. But I think it's an ebb and flow because there's slowly an increase to have that responsibility because vendors, investors, and partners are looking for somebody, one person, to be responsible for all of the security initiatives around the company because they want to know that cool, you have somebody who's responsible for the security product. What about the rest of the organization? Oh, it's on IT. Do you have expertise there? Oh, it's out to a consultant. What? So once somebody starts asking questions, and I've seen this in a lot of Series A, Series B startups, that they realize, oh, well, we need somebody who can figure this out. We can no longer rely and have it yet another hat for our CTO to wear, for our head of DevOps to wear, or our we can't outsource this to head of facilities or something like that, and look for that role to come back up. I think from a very big corporation perspective, it's still going to be a little bit vague because they don't want to have that one individual that it can throw under the bus. But at the same time, for smaller companies, multi-trillion dollar companies, it makes sense to have somebody. And I'm seeing an increase in the need earlier on in the company's growth rather than as a necessity, way down the line.
Got it. Thank you for that. And talking a bit about the industry, what do you think we will see in the cybersecurity space next?
Whew, they're just like any other. Every year there is a mix of FUD, mix of snake oil, and different startups and tooling. What I'm seeing a lot of is new players in the game that are focused on a specific um, threat vector or a specific part of a protection space that they're focusing on. Whereas before you would have one tool that was responsible for magnitude of the different parameters. So I am seeing a lot more of localization and that focus into a subset of technology to have that protected or providing additional service. And looking at my peers and the spend, we're having more and more vendors because the WAF from AWS cannot cover it all. The vendor that we used for our WAF only does one thing, but we need more. It doesn't support a certain technology, so we have to get another vendor. And basically, for lack of a better analogy, having like a multiple Venn diagram of similar services and then net new things that they do on the side to give you that level of complete protection, or perceived protection, if you will, because nothing is 100%. So I see a lot of that, but at the same time, there's a lot of movement of, we do X for Y, and the whole Web3 shenanigans. So there's a lot of uncertainty and new explorers in this world, and having those legacy vendors react by acquisitions, or creating trying to create those services that meet those smaller players. I would say that my conversations with venture-backed Series A, or those that they're essentially two people in a garage, types of companies that I've been interacting with, to understand what they're trying to build and what they're protect, has increased quite a bit, whereas before those conversations were held with medium to big size players in the field.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any changes or specific trends that you're seeing as related to budget planning? Like if we compare, the marketplace a few years ago, maybe pre-pandemic to post-pandemic.
So I think the way that the world has reacted to the pandemic, especially in terms of investment and all the money that all the businesses that were doing well, and explosion of business has created a lot of purchasing of different tools and services that were not attained before, because they were either too expensive, not needed, or needed but there was no funding for. And now we're getting to the point where we're kind of on the down portion of that bit of a boom, and seeing what truly matters, what is creating that ROI. In my case, I'm very close to the budget, very close to the planning, and helping finance and the business understand what we're investing in and where that ROI is. But at the same time, looking back at it, is this a turn the lights on activity, or am I getting X many thousands of dollars worth of ROI? Can I hire somebody in a different country? Can I hire a group of people that can do the same thing with spreadsheets and email than what this tool is providing us? And creating a balance of is this truly needed, and does it really affect the business in a positive way, has been top of mind for me, at least for this year so far. Whereas I was always enabled to make the right decisions and get the right tools to get my job done and enhance the enterprise.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. What would you say, what would you define as innovation in our space? Is it more along the lines of new products, new services, or is it like something different? For example, like how you monetize services internally, or anything else for that matter?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of different security vendors become platforms, or create that interconnectivity between two different applications. So that way you are enabled with the tool set that you have, the logs shifting one way, the alerts being made available, and you're taking the learnings from somebody else rather than starting from scratch. So instead of, if you are using a log vendor, they come prepared, like, hey, you're using this technology stack, here are some rules that we saw worked for number of companies that are your size. And having the interconnectivity through those platforms creates stickiness for those platforms, but at the same time you can leverage the learnings of somebody else that was there before you in order to get to where you need to be a bit quicker. I would say that, again, looking at to those hyper-specific niche players in the industry, they're all looking forward to be a stepping stone, and then question mark platform, and everybody's looking to be that centralized place to do X sort of activity. And platforms are great, and businesses are always looking for a way to leverage and make themselves sticky, and some of them are doing it pretty well, others are missing the mark quite a bit. But I see more of interconnectivity between different tools, instead of we take your logs and we push them here, and that's the end of the day deal. And how collecting those events from different sources, different tools, how all of them interact and how they work together, and the partnership between them, I've seen on the rise.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you look at the amount of acquisitions and newly newly founded unicorns out there, I think the fallacy of the MVP, the minimum valuable product, you just was able to get you through the Series A, Series B, and get you to that place where you're considered a unicorn. I think this is where the challenge begins, right? Because this is what you're talking about. You're talking about maturing those platforms and those tools into something more than just like a foot at the door and, just an initial installation and, like a show of proof of, some basic capabilities. You're talking about like the evolution of these tools and platforms. And I think that remains to be seen, just in my opinion.
Yeah. And it also depends, from my perspective, I'm looking at it as a mature startup versus somebody who might be in my position at a medium-sized enterprise company or a public company. The tools and the needs vary, and the solutions might be limited to the price point. I was looking at a vendor who, between two vendors, one was based upon the number of users, the other one was based upon number of API calls. And when we did the math, both of them were crazy expensive and outside of our budget, that we went like, well, let's just take what AWS has and come back to this when we know that we can write a check with way too many zeros. And that perspective also depends on the players that you're working with, because if you're very close to your enterprise shops that have those security tools that you can get a great discount, and you have one-stop shop for with that vendor, be it Dell, AT&T, and so on, is very different than if you're looking from bottom up and looking at all of the different vendor space, looking at G2, looking at what your InfoSec Twitter friends have, in order to make that decision as what's the right thing for your business.
Okay, got it. Well, we're actually almost out of time for today, and I know you have to go in a few minutes, but I just wanted to ask you a couple more questions about vendors. I'll keep it real quick. In your opinion, what should vendors stop doing?
Creating using plug and play demos. Every single time that I go into a vendor conversation is like, I don't care about the demo that you're going to show me. You're going to show me that something that works out of the box. Here's the thing that I need this solution to do. Give me that, and preemptively say that to the vendor, so that way when we go into the demo, it is catered towards my needs, instead of like some use case scenario that might not even apply, but it works amazing and it shows all the features of the product. And being able to cater that demo makes the conversation easier to go into. Second part is transparent pricing, and not like question mark business, question mark enterprise, and once you look under the rug, going, holy moly, this is something that we can't afford.
Okay, thank you. Anyone you wanted to mention in terms of like the people that you look up to, any influencers that you follow, anyone at all?
I don't know, anybody. Shout out to anybody that follows me on Twitter. Yeah. If I may do a plug, I am Zlatty on Twitter, ZLATTY. Terrible posting there, but it's more of stress relief and InfoSec memes than anything else.
And is that your preferred method of communication, by the way?
Yeah, anybody can contact me through there.
Okay, so not LinkedIn. So you said
LinkedIn is fine too. If you find me on LinkedIn, send a note. Yeah, I'm available.
So you said at Zlatty?
Yeah, ZLATTY.
Got it. Okay.
Oh boy.
Thank you for that. Yeah. What else? I had one more question. Yeah, actually, you know what? I think we are all done. Final question. If money was never an issue, what would you do with your life?
Ooh, buy a huge house somewhere in Croatia and spend my time swimming in the ocean and biking through Europe. And then hang out with my family, of course. That's a given, but with my extra time.
Okay, interesting. Moving back to Croatia, like full time, or just like dividing your time between? You
Really
don't know.
haven't thought
Yeah.
that through, but mostly staying there. I miss living in Croatia.
Okay. That's honest. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you again for taking the time today, Z. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I'm sure some of your answers would resonate with our listeners, and maybe they could take, some advice home and, better themselves with that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.